Vacancy rate versus occupancy rate. This is the thing that I think you should concentrate on when you are a self-property management, or if you are monitoring someone doing property management on your property. Because whether it is a short-term, a mid-term, a long-term, or a rent by the room property that you have, where I see people lose the most money is with their vacancy rate. This shows up two ways. The first is that people are too cavalier about the vacancy rate. So it's been sitting for a month or two and they think, hey, that's okay. Someone will show up eventually. It is okay. It's not the end of the world, but it is something where you should try and close that gap. Sometimes with my consulting clients, you see a focus on they have to get a certain number. So they're sure that their rental is worth this. Well, even if they achieve that number and they hit it, the vacancy has stripped out the gains that they have gotten versus if they had just rented it a little bit cheaper, a little bit sooner. I hope that makes sense. So that's the first thing. They're okay with the vacancy rate, or they're cavalier about that vacancy rate, which also leads into the second point, which is what I just mentioned, which is this idea that the rental property should get a certain amount. Now, the market dictates what the rental will get, and for a midterm strategy or a short-term strategy, it's going to be worth more in the high months. So whenever your high tourist, high traffic season is, and worth less during your slower months. And you need to accommodate so that you can close the gaps on these vacancies. On that note, this video is going to cover the state of midterm rentals versus rent by the room in 2024, because I do not think the two models are equal. I think one is vastly superior to the other, and I think the other contributes to your vacancy rate, which in my opinion is your biggest problem with your rental. My name is Erin Spradlin, and right now I can see a dust bunny under my couch, which I'm going to try to ignore for the rest of this video. Anyways, my name is Erin Spradlin. I am a midterm rental consultant, author, and real estate agent. I have written 3 books on midterm rentals. I have been doing midterm rentals myself since 2017. I am a consultant nationwide for people that want advice on how to do their midterm rentals, how to set it up on platforms, how to vet, etc. And for real estate, I help clients in Denver and Colorado Springs. Before we get started, I have a 92% occupancy rate across my rentals, and I typically get 40 to 65% above long-term unfurnished rents. I mention that not just to brag, I am proud of those numbers, but I mention that so you'll listen to this advice, because I think people sometimes can get locked in on theories that work against them versus work for them. Okay, so right now I'm going to talk about why I don't like rent by the room, and then after I explain that, I will explain why I think midterm rentals are the future of the rental market in the United States. The rent by the room model is going to be a 30+ day furnished or unfurnished rental, and it is going to be on the room level. So you are going to lease on the room level, and the tenants are not going to know each other necessarily, and they're going to share common spaces. So living rooms, kitchens, bathrooms, etc. A midterm rental is an entire unit rental. It is for 30+ days or more and furnished model. So that's the difference between the two. 100% prefer a midterm rental if you own the property but you do not live there, and so you have the capacity to rent out the entire property. Now, if you are a landlord that lives in the space and you need to rent out a room, then it's a fine model. And part of the reason why rent by the room actually becomes a better model if the landlord lives on site is because you are there and you're the person that they're always talking to and communicating with, which takes me to my first issue with rent by the room. So what I mean by that is that they're always going to know who's going to be on site, and they're going to know that you have eyes on the property and that you're going to be managing it. There are a lot of issues with rent by the room, but the first one we are going to start with is the fact that the tenants don't know each other. So this is like not only just having roommates, but it's having roommates that you don't know, that you didn't sign off on. And this can be an issue for a lot of reasons, including the cleanliness level of how someone keeps their bathroom, how they keep their kitchen, etc. Ask any married couple in the world, and my point will be proven right on this. So the cleanliness level is an issue. Volume can be an issue. And then also for people that present as females, I think this is an issue as well, because, you don't know if there's someone that is going to be hitting on you or more aggressive than you on the other side of the door. And I don't think that this is a non-issue. I think that women know about this issue, and if you put them in a rent by the the room situation, this is definitely going to be a more prominent issue than it would be if they had the property totally to themselves, and or if they decided to rent with one other person and those two people who agreed to live together rented the entire property together. Issue number 2 is that you potentially have a very high vacancy rate in the rent by the room model. And the reason for that is because you're renting out the bedrooms. So if you can keep the rooms fully rented all the time, then great. You're probably going to make more money than a midterm rental. However, this assumes that you can get people in those rooms all the time. And I found that it is much harder to find people that will rent a room and share a kitchen and bathroom with strangers than it is to find someone that wants the entire property. So unless you keep those rooms leased out and rented all the time, then you're going to have vacancy, and that's going to cut into your numbers. And at that point, you might be better off to do a midterm rental. What I mean by that is that classically, a rent by the room, if you could rent out all those bedrooms all the time, you're going to make more money on that model. A midterm rental is going to be slightly less money, but it doesn't work. The rent by the room does not work unless it's rented out full time. Okay, so that's issue number 2. Issue 3 is that as the landlord, the rent by the room model requires the most work from you. So that the tenants have agreed to live in a rental. They have agreed to lease out the room, but they have not agreed to the other personalities or the other roommates. The reality is when those issues show up, they're going to come to you and expect you to manage them. Be in and out dealing with tenant disagreements all the time. You are also going to have to try and keep it leased. And just in general, I think that adults, when they hit a certain income level, are not looking to have roommates, much less roommates they don't know. So that is not only why I'm not a huge fan of rent by the room in 2024, but it's also worth mentioning that when I take on consulting clients and they're having issues, so they've had a rental, the rental has been photographed well, it looks like a decent rental, but it's not renting out, the first step we take is to convert it into a whole unit rental if that's possible, because I've found a lot of the times that will solve the problem. Before I get into why I love midterm rentals so much and why I think they're the future, if you feel like you've learned something on this video, please like this video. And if you want notifications on when I put out new videos around midterm rentals, rent by the room, self-property management, hit that subscribe button. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about why I love midterm rentals so much and why I've been doing them since 2017. Well, the reason why I got into midterm rentals is probably the reason why a lot of you have gotten into midterm rentals, which is that Denver changed their laws. They were furnished. What were we going to do? So in 2017, we made the leap into 30+ day furnished rentals and have been very happy with them and have not looked back since. In fact, we have had the option on some of our other properties outside of Denver to do short-term rentals on them, and we have declined to do them because we feel like short-term rentals require more work. The tenant pool is a little bit more demanding, and we felt like at the end of the day, we were happy with our midterm rental numbers. So that's advantage number 1, is that you are within the regulation of most cities if you are doing a midterm rental. And a midterm rental here being 30 days or more furnished. Do not do 28 days. That is actually something Airbnb talks about, but 28 days usually will not pass the code, whereas 30 days will. The only city that I've ever run into that had an issue with this was Baltimore, and Baltimore has a 90-day exception. Every other city I've talked to anyone about is 30 days or more. So this is why a lot of people entered the midterm rental space, is because regulation came to their city, and or they just found that the short-term rental was too much work. Added to that, if you have a property manager, so if you're out of state on a short-term rental and you have a property manager on it, it will eat up your profits pretty quickly. And a midterm rental is pretty easy to self-property manage, even if you're out of state. So that's number 1. The second reason why I like a midterm rental is because even though it's a 30+ day rental, we tend to see people more and more coming into the space that want it for 90 days, 120 days, a year, but they pay that elevated price because they want a furnished rental. So you're making more money and you're doing less work. And as a note on this, if people are coming in and they're renting for 6 months or more, we don't pay the utilities. We actually put it in their name, or we make them put it in their name. That's reason number 2. They tend to stay for quite a long time. They pay that elevated rent. Number 3 is that they tend to be a nice tenant pool. What I mean by this is that if they can remote work, they can self-manage, they're kind of responsible people, and they also might be a little bit more established in their careers. And I like that more than a short-term rental tenant, because short-term rental tenants tend to be a little bit more demanding. On that note, traveling nurses tend to be a little bit more demanding too. It's okay, they're really good tenants. They make for really good tenants, but they are definitely the most high maintenance tenants in the midterm space that I've found. All right, and the fourth reason why I like the midterm rental space is because I think it's the future of rentals. Now, I started to get really interested in midterm rentals because I'd had success with my own since 2017. But what was really interesting to me was that in 2020, because of COVID, we had a lot of movement with traveling nurses, but more important, we had remote workers. They had freedom from being geographically tethered. I knew that there would be a lot more travel in the US and a lot more people that wanted to try a month here, 3 months there, go and see family, go and see a friend, live in California, whatever. So more and more, I think you're going to start to see it on a local level as well. And the reason why I believe that is because in the past, back in my day when I was growing up, there was not an option for furnished rentals. So I didn't buy my first property until I was 33. I was moving every year. And so I was moving not that nice of furniture every single year to all these different apartments. If someone had given me the option of just moving myself into a nicely decorated apartment or condo, and that was the agreement that I paid a little bit more for a year, I would have 100% done that. A, I wouldn't have had to pay for moving costs. B, I wouldn't have paid for furniture. And C, it would have been like nice and curated and looked cool. I'm not the only person that feels this way. I think other people in the future will also want this. And so that is why I think midterm rentals are growing rapidly in popularity. They are like the pickleball of rental models. And that's why you are seeing Furnish Finder get such an uptick, Airbnb leaning into it, Zillow Rental Manager is now trying to get into the space as well. You like free stuff? I have a bunch of free stuff at the Stand Store. I have a link to it in the description. That link will also take you to consulting information. So I offer a 1 hour package, a 2 hour package, 6 hour package, and then a bigger package where I just build out your property, get it SEO optimized, everything for the platform of your choice. And I will talk to you about which platform I think makes most sense depending on your goals. And then I will hold your hand through the vetting of the first tenant and sourcing that first tenant. So them getting into the space. After our relationship, you can self-property manage and feel confident that you know what you're doing. Looking for more videos on the platforms, I recommend this one or this one.